All right. So yesterday sucked. Um, but and I usually don't say stuff or do things, but one of the things that I've seen as we've been walking through what I could stand to watch on some of this was Charlie's political career and Charlie's political function and how he was going to be president and all the political stuff, and that was great. I mean, fantastic. All those things are true. I'm not arguing those things. Um, the Nick Fuentes came out. I think that's how to say his name, the representative, um, and he said that the reason that he was murdered, he was assassinated, was because he was effective. And I think that's where we really need to kind of look into and be like, why was he effective? What was it that he was effective at doing that made people so push him to the point where they had to assassinate him? It wasn't that he was turning people into Republicans. That wasn't his thing. It's not that he was converting people to conservatism. That wasn't his thing. In fact, he said this in an interview, about 2-3 months ago. They said if he was to die, what would he want to be remembered for? He didn't say that he was, the best politician, this and that. What he said was that he wanted to be remembered for his faith, his courageous work on his faith. The reason that Charlie Kirk was so effective was because he was not just telling people bullet points. He would, talking points. He wasn't just trying to get people to, come over and, obey the rhetoric of the right. He was converting people to Christianity, and that is the easiest route to his form of conservatism that you can come up with, because the base of Christianity is freedom of choice. It's free will. It's not just that Christ died for us. That's a major piece of it, but it's that the biggest piece of it, the most underlying thing from Christianity, is that we get to choose to follow Christ, or we can say no, and that's up to us. And that is the underpinnings for all of the Western society's function when it's at its real basis function. Even capitalism is actually individual ownership of IP. So what capitalism is that, if you have a thought, a product, an idea, you own that product, that thought, that idea, and you own your body and your time. And you can do whatever you want to with your property, your time, and your thought. That's not what we're practicing today in the economic function we have now, but that's one of the basic underlying principles of the free market economy is freedom. So this is one of those things that I think we need to recognize the reason that he was, and this is my opinion, nobody else has said this that I've heard, the biggest issue, the reason he was so effective was because he was teaching Christianity. And when people started to understand what real Christianity is, and they started to understand how they could find purpose and how they could find meaning, and that the world was bigger than just them, they start coming over, and it makes a lot of sense when you're like, here are the ways that you just do things in this path, in this manner. People have to have the right to have different opinions, which he always allowed. He just made them look silly because they weren't very factual in their information, which horrifies a lot of people on the opposing side, because a lot of the things they say don't make any sense. They're highly emotional, but they don't make any sense. And when you actually sit down and have a conversation and you think through them, it's easy to defeat them, especially if you base that on an underpinning truth, like Christianity or something like that. So that was the reason he was effective, and that's the reason that I believe that he was actually killed. It wasn't necessarily that he was going out and telling people that Trump's a great guy and they should vote for Trump or they should do anything on the right. It was because he was going to these college campuses and he was converting these kids to Christianity. And part of converting them to Christianity was them understanding what the conservative movement was. He wasn't bringing people to conservatism and Republican in per se. He was building an entirely new party based on the ideas that we had 50, 60 years ago. So that was the reason he was a threat to both sides, because there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of things going on. So that's my take on it. That's where I think the real issue was. He was never, every time he was pushed and he was asked, what about this and what about that, it always came back to his faith. And And there's a lot of people out there who are pimping that who aren't real, and I think Charlie really was. So that's where I think this was, and that's why I think this is such a phenomenal loss. Not just because I think he would have been a good politician or he wouldn't have been or whatever. It was because of what he was doing with these kids on these campuses. He started off just him at a table and nobody was there. And now there's thousands and thousands of people. And there's people working with him to change lives and grow. And so the most tragic thing that I think that we could let happen from this is if we don't support Turning Point and try to keep what Charlie started going. It's really easy to let something like this die. And I think it would be a bigger tragedy to let what was started at Turning Point on these college campuses, converting these kids, exposing them to the truth, talking to them, giving them realities, giving them opposing viewpoints than what they're being fed and indoctrinated in the college campuses. This is a much bigger fight than I think a lot of people understand. We're losing it. The culture is starting to change, and it's not great. I think if we can continue to support Turning Point and what they're doing, educating people on realities, educating people on science, actual science, keeping people abreast of the actual facts, not just the talking points, but giving them an underpinning philosophical basis for why these things are important, for where a lot of these ideas truly came from, in pushing back against the nonsense and the name calling and whatnot, and making people look silly, for holding views that are emotional and not based in logic, and then making secondary decisions upon them. So that's where I see that his most important impact was. And I would caution people to not support the stuff that he has created and he had built. I can't guarantee you where Turning Point will continue to go. But I think that what we have noticed is that we can make a massive impact on our culture and our kids in the future by going to college campuses and just talking to kids. I keep calling them kids. I call my NFL athletes who are 25-year-old kids too. Apparently I'm old. But talking to these college kids, college people. And I think that's going to be a big, big piece. I see so many of these kids after they've gone through sophomore and junior year of college, where they've just gotten out and they're highly confused. And there's a lot of woke going on. And I think, referring to the woke mind virus, as Elon refers to it, I think that's pretty accurate. So this is a much bigger thing. The woke mind virus has been part of the indoctrination of our country for a long time. And Charlie was pushing back directly against that. So, that is, the woke mind virus is used to control, manipulate, and alter things. That's why it's there. It's a neuro-linguistic programming thing. It's what it is. The way that they're programming these people is very impressive. Once you've sat down and talked to somebody who's been through it, some of these college kids, it's pretty impressive. And Charlie was pushing back directly against that. So that is, in my opinion, what was actually the reason that got him assassinated. So that's the piece that I want to make sure that, at least from my 2 cents, that we don't forget. I'm sure there's going to be lots of people talking about politics and this and that, and the next politician who's going to, talking head who's going to step up and, take his spot talking about politics, and fantastic. Don't really care about that. I think what we need to do is we need to figure out who's going to be the next person who's going to be out teaching these kids about Christianity and about making moral judgments, about purpose. I think that's going to be the place where we're really going to need to focus on what we actually, the depth of what we lost. So I would keep that in mind. I don't know what to tell you on top of that. That's the biggest thing that struck me, that people are not. That's the point that I don't think people are hitting hard enough. So, yesterday sucked. So, yeah. Anyway, that's all I got on that one. You guys have a great day. Hopefully today will be significantly better than yesterday.